Hi there, I'm your mystery scientist, and I am interested in how sea level rise alters salt marsh plant communities, so who is there, and how shifts in plant composition might alter carbon sequestration. I'm also interested in how wetland restoration affects plants and the services that they provide. So I tend to focus my research on plants because they're really cool, but they're also good indicators of the environment. So they're sensitive to differences in soil moisture, light, salinity, and nutrients. And so it's really interesting for me to see how they change over time in response to things like sea level rise or restoration. Wetland plants are also cool because they change the environment that they are growing in. For example, they release oxygen into the soil, they compete for nutrients, their dead leaves and roots help create soil and build up sediment, and they cast shade that alter the microhabitat for other organisms living in wetlands. So, how do I do my research? So I use a combination of observational studies and experiments. I really like field experiments because it gives me an opportunity to manipulate different variables and examine how plants and carbon respond. So as an example, last summer I set up what is called a marsh organ experiment, where we grow plants in these big pipes of different heights. So the shorter pipes get flooded more frequently than the tall pipes. And so we measure how different levels of water influence plant growth and carbon fluxes. So how does my work help us understand climate change? So I think my research helps us understand how the reshuffling of living things on the planet associated with a changing climate and human dominance can influence what our wetlands can do and how they function. So what are the implications or next steps? How are my findings being used, or could they be used? So I think coastal managers and communities along our coastlines are very interested in what is going to happen with sea level rise. So our findings suggest that we may get less carbon sequestration, less carbon being sucked up by the plants and stored in the soils as our plant communities shift and then drown with rising seas. So a new form of restoration that we are testing actually is called thin layer placement. And this is where we add sediment on top of drowning marshes to help them keep up with sea level rise. Okay, so some parting words about climate change, which I know can be very daunting. The doom and gloom associated with climate change can be paralyzing. But we can all do something, right? So one of my environmental heroes, her name is Wangari Maathai, and she tells this African parable about a huge forest fire and how all the animals are overwhelmed and terrified and just standing there, paralyzed. And all but a small hummingbird are just standing around watching the forest burn to the ground. And this hummingbird says, "Come on, let's do something." And the hummingbird goes to the stream and it fills its little beak with water, and then it goes and it drops a couple drops on the burning forest. And the other forest animals are standing around laughing at the hummingbird, saying, "You're too little, what can you do? You can't put out that fire." But the hummingbird goes back and forth to the stream, dropping water on the burning forest. And soon, the other animals are inspired to start helping. And one by one, the animals start joining in, and including the elephant with its big trunk, fills it up with water and sprays it on the burning forest. And so I like this message because it highlights how we all can do something, right? We have to do the best we can. So I encourage you to be the hummingbird and do the best that you can.